we are talking about interview success. So I have not only interviewed for jobs, of course, but I've also been on the other side of the table, hiring staff and also serving on university search committees. So I've pulled together all of my experience to help you get through your next interview. What is the real purpose of the interview? So first and foremost, the employer is trying to see if you have the skills and qualifications to do the job. However, most often, if you have already landed the interview, they already know you can do the job. So they're trying to feel you out, test your personality. Most importantly, they're trying to see if you are a good fit for the organization. Now, I have mixed feelings about what it means to fit in. I believe sometimes that concept can point to skewed hiring practices and assimilation, but however, I do understand the importance of team building and finding the right person to complete the job. Now, as a candidate, you should be able to clearly articulate your skills and qualifications as it relates to the job description and the position you are applying for. You should also be able to clearly articulate your goals, your interests, and the contributions you will bring to the organization. So what value do you bring? Be able to clearly articulate all of that. And lastly, be able to share your knowledge about the organization in detail, which leads us to tip number 1. Do your research on the organization. Now, you want to spend a great deal of time on the company's website. You want to read the mission, the vision, the strategic plan. You want to look at reviews. You want to look at the staff. You want to look at the staff on LinkedIn. You want to do a deep dive into the organization. Leave no stone unturned. Investigate, investigate, investigate. Because the last question you want to ask is, what will I do in this position? That shows that you have not done your due diligence researching the position and researching the organization. And more than likely, they're going to ask you, what do you know about the organization? So spend a great deal of time on the website and get your hands on any reviews or anything you can on the organization. Tip number 1. Tip number 2, arrive early and dress the part. So if you are unfamiliar with the interview location, I recommend that you go the day before just to kind of scope out the scene. And also, as far as attire, some people go back and look at the website to see how the staff dresses in the work environment. Now, that's totally fine, but I would recommend business attire. It's your safest bet. Tip number 3, do not speak negatively about past employers, employees, or supervisors. Even if your past job was a hot mess, you hated it and it sucked, do not share that with your potential new employer, okay? Find something positive to share about your past experience if it was bad. So for example, maybe you had friends at your last job. You can say, I collaborated effectively with my teammates to advance the mission of the organization. Boom, there you have it. You're welcome. Don't speak negatively about your past employer, employees, or supervisor. Don't do it. Tip number 4, prepare for behavioral questions. You will be asked some type of behavioral question, and it usually takes the form of tell me when you. All right, so tell me when you dealt with a difficult person, when you solved a problem, when you were challenged with something and how did you solve it? So these are behavior type questions. So there is a formula for this and how you want to answer it. You want to share the problem, number 1. 2, you want to share the action, what you did. And then number 3, you want to share the result, all right? In that order, share the problem, the action you took, and then the result. Make it concise and write out your answer and practice it, because you will be asked, tell me when a time. These are very popular questions nowadays. Another question that you will be asked is tell me about yourself. Now, this question is not a personal question, it's a business question. So you won't share, oh, my favorite Netflix series is this, I love eating ice cream. No. That is personal. This is a business question. So you want to tell them key things about you as it relates to them, all right? Interviews are about the employer. So if you're applying for a music director job, for example, you want to tell them about your experience as a music director, all right? So it's a business question, not a personal question. Now I want to hear from you. What are some questions you have received in your interview? Comment below and let me know. Tip number 5, you are not perfect. None of us are perfect. They'll probably ask you what are your strengths and your weaknesses. So with your weaknesses, you want to give a real weakness. So be truthful, but you don't want to give a weakness that is crucial for the job you're applying for. So you want to steer clear of that. So for example, if you're applying for a management position, you don't want to say, I hate people, right? So don't list a weakness or don't give a weakness that is crucial for the job you are applying for. But be truthful with your weakness, because we all have weaknesses. But when you give a weakness, you want to also state how you're working on it. So just don't give a weakness and leave it at that. But give a weakness and tell them how you're working on improving that weakness, or what you've been doing to work on that weakness. That is very, very crucial, so don't miss that step. Tip number 6, don't ask about salary and don't answer questions about salary expectations early on. So if this is your first interview, more than likely they're not going to ask you what your salary expectation is, but some employers have asked me that in the past. So make sure you do your research on the salary on Glassdoor or salary.com so you have an idea, just in case you are pressed with that question and they really want to answer from you. I would also suggest giving a specific number, because if you give a range, guess what they're going to do? They're going to take the lowest number of that range that you have offered. Now, there is possibly a way around this. Now, some people in the past have given their highest salary request as the lowest number, so they create their range that way. And so that's a possibility. So you give your highest number as your lowest number if you want to give a range. But I would steer clear of conversations about salary in the very first meeting. But again, if you are pressed to answer, make sure you do your research ahead of time, again, on Glassdoor or salary.com, or talk to others in the field to benchmark salary. Tip number 7, send thank you emails. Now, some people have recommended that you send a thank you note. Either is fine, but you want to send either a thank you note or a thank you email to everyone that you have interviewed with. Everyone. So make sure you take notes of who you interview with, their names, and then some things that are interesting during the interview, so then you can point back to those in your thank you note or your thank you email. So you want to move from a generic thank you to a more catered thank you email to the individuals you have spoken with. So for example, you can say, after today's interview, I am even more interested in this position based on blah, 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 based on something someone said in the interview, and something that you may be interested in joining with that team person to accomplish a certain goal. So you can mention that in the thank you email. Make it short, but make it specialized. And this is really important because it's a small world. So even if you do not get the job, but I'm hoping you do, but even if you don't get the job, you never know if you're going to run across these individuals again that you have interviewed with. So just a thank you note or thank you email is just the right thing to do. Tip number 8, have questions ready. So when they ask you, do you have any questions for us? The answer is always yes. The answer is always yes. Repeat after me. The answer is always what? Yes. Yes. You always need to have questions at the end of the interview. Some questions that I like to ask are, what does the typical week look like in this position? This will give you insight on the culture of the team and the culture of the organization. If you interview with your potential supervisor, you can ask, what is their management style? Another good question to ask is, what would you like someone to accomplish in this position in the first 90 days? You can also ask how past employees have been successful in this position. Another question, where do you see the organization in the next 5 to 10 years? How are decisions made? Are there opportunities for advancement and professional development? How often are performance reviews, and what does the performance review entail? What are the biggest challenges someone in this position will face? How will I be trained? I have 3 additional questions that I want you to ask your potential employer as it relates to COVID-19. These are very important questions. Number 1, how has your organization been impacted by COVID-19? Number 2, how has your organization responded to COVID-19? In particular, what changes or pivots have they implemented? And number 3, how do you see the organization moving forward from COVID-19? Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. If you haven't subscribed, please take care of that now. Smash the subscribe button and join the musical family. Until next time, keep creating beautiful music.